have 11 o'clock on the dot, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Good morning to all of you. Welcome to our Visiting Angels Coffee Chat, our bi-weekly conversation where if you don't like coffee, feel free to have tea, water, or whatever you enjoy. My name is Mary Ellen Wilson, and I am your Business Development Manager with Visiting Angels. We have offices in Gaithersburg, in Edgewater, in Silver Spring, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. And we provide home care for older adults who prefer to age gracefully in place. Now, today, I'm very excited because we are going to be talking to one of my favorite guests, I think all of our favorite guests, Sheila Griffith. We are going to be talking about navigating the holidays when you have a loved one with Alzheimer's. But before we begin, I do want to just do a little bit of housekeeping. And that is this. Number one, if you have questions that pop into your head while you are listening to the presentation, by all means, go ahead and put them in the chat box, or you can use the Q&A, whichever is easier for you. And we will have a Q&A session at the end of Sheila's presentation. If you are on Facebook, good morning, Facebook friends. You too can ask questions just by entering your question in the comment area. We have Tiffany working behind the scenes, and she will let us know what questions you may have. So Tiffany, I am going to ask you to let Sheila go ahead and share her screen. We are going to get started. Please help me to welcome our favorite guest, Sheila Griffith of the Alzheimer's Association. Sheila, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's nice to see everybody. Thank you, Mary Ellen. It's such a warm welcome. I appreciate it. I do feel like we're old friends. We've been doing this for several months now. It's a great idea and a great way to really revisit some ideas that people might have heard about before, or give them some fresh perspectives, I hope, on in today's our topic is effective communication, and for people with Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and especially around the holidays, and especially during our pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic we find ourselves in now. So I'm gonna start to share my screen. Let me get my things up
While
here.
You're getting ready, I will just piggyback on what you just said. I am especially excited about today's topic for that reason. You know, there's so many stressors going on right now, not the least of which is everything that's going on with our election. We have a pandemic that seems to be growing again. So our Thanksgiving and even our Christmas holidays or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, etc., may look very different this year. And for someone, when we have a loved one suffering from some cognitive issues like Alzheimer's, that can add a whole nother layer of stress. So I'm really excited about this. Looks like you're ready. So
yeah, and that, thank you. Then that's a great segue. Is what this is our usual. What I have up here is our effective communication strategies that are good anytime we talk about Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And I'm going to share a lot of our baseline knowledge that we know about communicating with people with Alzheimer's and dementia today. But what we're going to do is layer on, as we said, the holidays coming and the pandemic. So these are can sometimes be stressful times, as you said, and we need to not only think about how the stress is affecting us, but sometimes we have the stress affecting our loved one that might have this disease, Alzheimer's or some type of dementia, and even the way we communicate. If we don't control our stress in communicating to our loved one, well, we're all going to be stressed out. We're all going to see our stress level go up. So we'll start with talking about Alzheimer's disease and effective communication. I'm going to bounce around in my program here just a bit, because we're not going to show videos or do some of the other things that we normally do in the program. We're going to really leave some time to talk about how our communication might have changed during the pandemic. So this is what communication is. It's connecting with others. It's conversation, as we know. It's words, facial expressions, but it's also things like body language and tone of voice, that even when we have dementia or Alzheimer's disease, these things we still pick up on. We're still looking at people, looking at our loved ones. We're still, maybe if we're confused about language, we might still be very sure about body language and tone of voice. So these are all things that we still want to make sure we understand how we communicate, and that we communicate in a lot of different ways. Um, this is the main slide I wanted to show, is that with Alzheimer's disease and many other diseases with dementia as a symptom, in Alzheimer's disease, there is an early stage, a middle stage, and a late stage. And so sometimes in the early stage, somebody's being mildly affected. They are still able to convey their thoughts and their feelings. They're still able to make decisions about future care. They're still competent. They're able to understand, a lot of the healthcare directive and different kind of financial and legal planning documents that we might have. But they may misinterpret what others say in the early stages. They're still there. It may be the beginning of confusion. So if we take the early stage, if you look at it, this could be something that is easily in denial. We could say, yes, I am having some problems with my memory, but I'm still able to talk and to still have conversations and to still make decisions. And we don't realize that we might be in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease, because there's other things that are happening in our brain. So I always say the early stage of Alzheimer's disease can sometimes be misinterpreted and can sometimes be skipped, because we don't realize that we're actually even having a problem. It's not till the middle stage, where if you see on this slide, um, where things are really starting to affect us. So our communication, it may be changed in a way that we don't use big sentences or complete sentences like we used to. We're using basic words and basic sentences. We start to not understand the words people are saying to us as much as we listen to the tone of voice and the body language, as I had said earlier. That becomes a lot more important. And we continue to need a lot of emotional support and a lot of connection. So that never goes away. Sometimes when somebody has Alzheimer's disease and it doesn't seem like they maybe are listening to us or understanding us, they still do need emotional connection. And if they can't understand our words, we have to find a way to communicate still that emotional connection that we feel with that loved one. So that's an important one, and we'll talk about that as we go. In the late stage of Alzheimer's disease, we may still respond to familiar words and phrases and songs. You've probably heard that when people are in late stage Alzheimer's disease, playing music or reciting poetry or just things that the person really likes, it becomes more meaningful to them, and that it's able to reach them more than maybe just having a conversation. You can have a conversation and they don't answer you. But if you play their favorite song, they might even sing along with it. So it's music really continues to affect us even later in a disease like this. And so we always say in the late stage, continue to use body language, hold hands, whatever the person might prefer. If they were always a hand holder or a hugger, continue to hug and hand hold, and use the five senses to connect. So that's a really important part also of the late stage. So that's an overview of communication throughout the three stages of the Alzheimer's disease. Who knows where our loved one is in this disease? Sometimes it's hard to see where people are in each stage. What it's like for me may be different than what it's like for somebody else with the same diagnosis. It affects us all differently because it's a progressive brain disease. So we're going to talk about a little bit about some of the struggles and the changes that you might notice. um, and I think what I've heard from caregivers more than anything now is we notice these things even more so because we're home together with our loved one. So and if we have somebody coming in the home, like visiting angels or another somebody who's helping us, we're all going to notice it more often than if we were having our loved one go out more, either to an adult day program, or we just weren't noticing as much. And I think we can say that about everybody,
Yeah.
even our family members who do not have Alzheimer's disease. But some of the changes we might be noticing are difficulty finding the right words, taking longer to speak and respond to what we're asking, maybe starting to withdraw from conversations, and maybe struggling with decision making or problem solving. So these are things that can all be a sign that something is not quite right. And as a caregiver, we have to take steps to go ahead and try to figure out if we can work around whatever might be happening. So if we take longer to speak or respond, or our loved one takes longer, well, we need to give them longer. Um, you know, Mary Ellen, you and I are a lot alike in our speaking styles. I think we kind of move fast, and we talked for
Right.
a long time before the program even started.
Mhm.
So for me, I think when I'm dealing with somebody who is taking longer to speak or respond, it really has to slow me down too. It doesn't make somebody else right or wrong. It's just the style and the speed that they're speaking at. So I think if you'd probably have the same problem, you'd have to really dial yourself down a little bit too.
Oh my goodness gracious, absolutely, especially in the business world, especially when you're in sales, it is meeting the speed and the tone of the person that you're speaking with, meeting their rhythm. And yeah, when you are a quick speaker, it can be difficult. And one thing though that I wanted to also, well, actually two things, because this goes right back to what we learned in one of your very first coffee chats with us, which was we have to enter their world now. They're not, they can't be expected to keep being pulled back into our world. Our behaviors, our communication has to meet them where they are, which I think is such an important thing. And the other point I wanted to make while listening about to this is, with the holidays coming, that's often time when loved ones see that are not around their dad maybe every day. They come home for the holidays and say, wow, mom, something's going on with dad, have you noticed? And I think it's going to be different this year with the difference that the different with the pandemic,
And
basically.
that's a great point. Yeah, and that's so great. I'm glad you brought it up because that is the number one way we discover that somebody might have a problem is that the holidays hit in a normal time when we were all able to get together, and maybe there's a large group, and maybe grandma, grandpa, or somebody, our loved one, is starting to take longer to respond, or is not even participating in the conversation at all. Usually is a loves to be around the Thanksgiving table and having a lively conversation, and they're just not. It's not happening anymore. So normally, in a normal time without a pandemic, that would be a big indication, and maybe talk with the person who is closest to that our loved one who's maybe having the problem, and find out, is there other things that are happening? Are they having difficulty finding the right word? These are all great questions in these changes to find out. Now, in the pandemic, what will we see around the Thanksgiving table? That's the question, is that we may have, we're being encouraged not to get together in large groups, and we're being encouraged not to maybe travel to be in large groups of friends and families. So how will that play out? It a little differently. I think if our loved one has this disease, they're still going to have a lot of these changes in their speech and the way they communicate and think. But we may be, who knows? Maybe we notice it on Zoom. I don't know. I've not tried this before, but I've heard of people who are doing like preparing dinner and having dinner together on Zoom. So they all are sitting around tables in different spots, and maybe a family, maybe 2 or 3 different areas, and they're all eating dinner together, or prepared the dinner and then eating. and this isn't even Thanksgiving yet, so I don't know what Thanksgiving will bring, but if it brings anything, either in person in small groups, if that's what's going to happen, or even on Zoom, you could still see if somebody has any of these issues or changes in the way they communicate. So you brought up a great point. Whatever you do see, whatever you might observe, you're going to go ahead and put yourself in their reality. So slow yourself down if that's what it takes. Um, Sometimes it takes just one-on-one conversation with a person. So I'm no longer good at talking around a large group of people, even four or five group of 4 or 5 people. I'm much better at just one-on-one. When we sit down together, make eye contact, and we can have a really good conversation still. But if I'm talking to a large group, maybe I'm not as comfortable. Maybe I'm getting mixed up in the conversation. I'm not remembering where we are in the conversation. And so this can be difficult. Um, I think one of the things we also we talked about in probably in other of our programs is that joining the reality, sitting down calmly, maybe even taking somebody's hand, or putting your arm around somebody and just really showing that we're having this conversation together, and together, we can relax and have a good conversation.
Right.
I think sometimes people don't know how to act, or if you notice a change in a loved one and you're in person with them, maybe you feel awkward, maybe you feel afraid. I don't know how I'm supposed to talk to my mother anymore. She's not making as much sense as she used to, and she's, argumentative or something. There's a big change in her communication style. So trying to connect to that person, trying to get to the point where you're both comfortable, and as you said, it is you making that person comfortable, the person with the diagnosis. So try to do everything you can to really make that conversation go well. We also talk about avoid making assumptions. So somebody may maybe act angry, but in fact they're not as angry as they're confused and it's coming out as anger. So sometimes if we just sit down with somebody and just try to keep it light, it doesn't have to be this deep conversation. You can see on this slide, laugh together is down there, be honest, laugh together. It's not a big deal. We can just have this nice moment. We don't have to talk about politics or anything really maybe that is earth shattering. Let's just laugh and talk about, maybe some of our memories of Thanksgiving, or reminiscing is always a fun activity with families to see who remembers what. And that's so much better for somebody with Alzheimer's disease or a dementia diagnosis, a memory impairment. Their long-term memory is going to be much better than their short-term memory. So if I have Alzheimer's disease and you want to talk about the past, and you want to make me feel comfortable, talk about the far past. Let's not talk about last year's Thanksgiving. Talk about 10 years ago or 20 years ago when we used to live in that old house. Do you remember that Thanksgiving? And give me some cues on, well, mom cooked the meal, and the dog ate the turkey that year. And, give me some cues, and then we can really have a nice conversation about and reminiscing about the past. So it's always great to try to laugh together. I hope most families probably do that, but if you don't, try to think of it more of a lighthearted conversation, especially if the person seems uncomfortable or it's difficult for them. How about here's another tip too, one question at a time. I didn't talk about my background, Mary Ellen, but you know that my background is in nursing home care and assisted living. And I can't tell you how many times I'd have families come into like the nursing home and come visit one of our residents, and they, maybe mom, dad, and a couple kids come in and say, "Guess who, grandma? Guess who?" And maybe grandma's really got in late stages of Alzheimer's disease and is sitting there and saying, "I don't know who you are," and we have to be more kinder about it and have to really take our time with this, and don't quiz people. Ask one question at a time, or say one thing at a time and let it sink in, and let's see what their time frame is and how they digest what we're saying. but basically don't quiz people. Don't say, do you know who I am, Grandma? Do you know who that is, Grandma? Let's give her the answer in the question. Look, Mary Ellen's come to visit you today, Grandma. Let's say hi to her, and Mary Ellen, what would you like to say to Grandma? And then have you be the one who makes the first step too, and then Grandma can respond to you appropriately, hopefully. So anyway, I think, and the rest of my presentation is really going to go into more of the changes in the different, in our different stages. So I think what I'd like to do is maybe shift to, now that we're in the pandemic and coronavirus, what are some things we can do to ease the conversation and to help things move along in a little bit better way. And you and I talked about this earlier, that I think after all these months in the pandemic, aren't we all getting a little tired? And we're getting ready for holidays, whatever your holiday is going to be, like the either Thanksgiving or and all the December holidays and New Year's. So how is it going to go? Well, let's think about this scenario, that our loved one who has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia or some memory impairment, they could be getting more confused. This is a very confusing time, and we already know if our loved one is confused or not when we're trying to get them to go out and they don't wear a mask, or they don't understand why we have to wear a mask, and they don't remember to wear a mask. So these are all reasons that we need to keep continuing to cue them and to remind them. And then more so now that this pandemic is continuing in so many areas, like in our area here in Maryland. So we think about extra reminders and extra support. So if getting together for the holidays can be a source of stress for some people, let's think about when we're stressed out, sometimes our memories aren't so good. And if we have Alzheimer's disease and we're under stress, our memory is probably going to be a little less so. I think that it's a good idea to talk with our loved one who we're home with, who has the diagnosis, Alzheimer's or dementia or some memory impairment, prepping them for whatever festivities it is we're going to have for Thanksgiving, whether it's our, we said earlier, small group, if we're not, able to join, or a medium group, and we shouldn't be in large groups. Obviously, that's what we're being cautioned not to get on a plane or join a big party for Thanksgiving or any holidays. But whatever we're doing, we can prep our loved one that we're going to maybe get together with a small family group. And let's talk about that. It's not going to be stressful, that we'll, either use masks or, to get there, or people will come to us and they'll have masks on, just reminding them that we are going to do good hand washing. We're going to wear masks. Just in general during this pandemic, I've heard from caregivers that say it's really been beneficial having little signs up, reminders to tell their loved one, wear a mask, wash hands, just to keep them safe. Yeah, even around the house. And I'm sure visiting angels, I'm sure, have seen that in people's homes too, as they've gotten into more and more homes as this
Oh,
pandemic continues.
absolutely. And we've actually put those signs up ourselves
Oh,
as well. Yeah, it's definitely a joint effort. And, it's very hard for our clients with Alzheimer's right now, as you can imagine, because there's nowhere to go. They're staying home. They can go for walks. Our caregivers will
yep.
take them on walks and whatnot, but it's not like they can go to the senior center or some of the memory cafes, etc. So, yes.
That's one of the that's a great piece of this pandemic continuing. So we don't know how much longer this will be. We don't know how many more months or whatever it's going to be. But start thinking like that. If you've noticed that maybe your loved one is getting bored of just going on the daily walk, either with you or with the caregiver, whoever is maybe assisting you, well, start to make plans about what else you'll do. Now the weather's going to change, and we might not be able, if we have a big winter or even just a lot of rain, we might not be able to get out the way we have been. It was a nice summer, I think, and a nice fall where we were all walking a lot.
Yes,
But
definitely.
what
Yeah.
will we
So, what
do?
is another option to do?
what
one of
are
the
other options in
places.
our
Yeah.
area? hmm And what's opening up, what's maybe safe, and just reminding our loved one that if we maybe, walk somewhere else that's indoors, well, we'll have to wear a mask while we walk. And then the person will say, well, why? Or they'll maybe say no. And we have to just continue to make sure that we can keep them safe. And I've heard mask wearing has been a big one, that nobody wants to wear a mask. It's hard.
Right.
And if you
Right.
forget that, you forget that you're protecting yourself, or if you don't remember that in the first place, then you don't understand why we have to wear a mask. So we do have to wear a mask. Maybe uh, we were thinking about taking a picture of a loved one in a mask and putting that up to say, hey, don't forget your mask. Even when we
Oh, what
don't
a great
have Alzheimer's.
idea. Yeah,
Well,
that is a great idea.
has it happened to you where I think I need this myself, but even now, after all these months and all the masks I've gathered, I have a zillion
Accumulated.
masks in this house. Yeah, sometimes I got out at CVS, went all the way up to the door without a mask on, went
I've
all the
done
way
the
back.
same thing. I
What
have
the
done
heck am
the
I
same
thinking? And
thing. I
I've
think
got
we
10 in
all
the
have.
car. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just,
Hmm.
yeah, just forgot. And so you can imagine it's important for our loved ones too. But think about that. That's a great assignment for all of us as caregivers, is to start thinking about the weather changing and thinking about how we'll sort of keep our loved one occupied and stimulated. In hopefully we've been doing a good job with that up till now, but that things might change a little bit, and we have to sort of change our gears and change what we're doing. There's a lot online, as we know, we're online right now, but sometimes you can get your fill of the online amusement stuff, and then like
Yes.
you just want to walk, or you just want to maybe bake cookies, or you just want to maybe think of more physical activities that you can do in the home or that are close to home that will occupy your loved ones. So it could get.
Actually, Sheila, I have a question about that. So, does the Alzheimer's Association have maybe a link or suggestions on the website of sort of like brain games or card games or
we
activities that you can do with a
We
loved one?
always do. Yes, thanks
Oh,
you for asking.
good.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll go ahead and put in my email address and our website. Our website is just alz.org. And we're nationwide, and we have chapters in every state. And so I work for one of the chapters in the national capital area here. And we have a lot of organized virtual memory cafes where you can join as somebody with a diagnosis. And right now we're in the midst of doing a music therapy in our meetings, and so it's super fun. It's a music therapist who has been going through the ages, starting from like 1930s all the way down to present day over the last
Wow.
couple months. Yeah, it's a great brain thing. And we talked about earlier how music can really stay with us even if the words don't come anymore, but the music can stay with us. So music therapy, I think, is a great way to kind of connect to people. But she also does a lot of reminiscing too. So you have to try to remember, what the names of certain things were from the 1950s, and certain cars, and so we
Oh,
have a lot.
that's so neat.
And I
Yeah,
know,
that's
and I
great.
know that there's other programming also. Even some of the adult daycare centers have gone online, and they have great programming normally in person, but they also have great programming online. So if you like, I can definitely be reached via email, and we can help you navigate some of the things that are available for your loved
Good. Now
one.
she's up. You froze
Oh,
for a
Tiffany,
second.
right. Well, how can I get Tiffany to come with me from here and just be at every every virtual
I
webinar I
know.
have? Thank you,
Tiffany
Tiffany.
is our behind the scenes gal. Let me tell you, so wonderful viewers and watchers. We were just talking before this particular episode of our coffee chat about how well and how seamlessly they go and
Mhm.
how our technology is so up to par. So yeah,
It
that'll teach
is though, and you're right. It's one of those things, and I think that I do this a lot too. And yeah, you don't, even when your Wi-Fi connection is like 100% 1 minute, it could cut out the next. We just like you
you just
really
don't.
can't predict it. We have
Yeah,
to be ready for that and not be stressed out and control
right.
ourselves. Yeah.
Right. As we just sit and drink our coffee and chat. So I did get a question the other day from one of our guests, our viewers, and I wanted, before I forget, I did want to run this by you because I think this might even become a bigger issue after the holidays when people are coming home and seeing their loved ones for the first time, for those that can.
Mhm.
The question is, I would like to know about testing for cognitive issues and how to go about it.
Terrific. Well, that's a great question, and one that, in your if you're noticing problems either in yourself or in a loved one, and I had a webinar not too long ago where it was a single woman who was telling me that she's noticed a change in herself and what should she do about it.
Mhm.
And the best thing to start with is, and it was in a totally different topic, and it was about going to the doctor. And so I said, you're in the right place, go to the doctor. So go to your primary care physician. And if you're 65 and older, Medicare age, you can have what's called a free wellness, Medicare wellness visit once a year. And you go and just talk generally about your health. And of course, they're going to take your blood pressure and your weight and listen to your heart and everything else and talk about your prescriptions, but talk about your memory too. I've noticed some problems in my memory. This is what's happened. And what they can do is either refer you to somebody who can give you a memory screening and a memory test, or they can even do it themselves in some cases. And I know with Visiting Angels, you guys are great about, you had free memory screenings that people can participate in even virtually.
We-
And I
Yeah,
think
we
that is a big
do.
help.
Yeah. So we do, it is just a screening though, but it allows you at least that first step. And we recommend, yes, based on our screening, either yes, you need to further evaluation, or you know what, we're not seeing any issues right now. You pass with flying colors. And actually, we do have our next virtual scheduled for December. I think it's the 8th, December the 8th.
Terrific.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so, yeah, more
Well,
info on
I
that.
would encourage somebody who's in that, has that question, or is in that feels they're in that phase maybe of some sort of memory loss or memory impairment. One of our other programs was talking about the difference between normal aging and your memory normally aging, and then abnormal memory loss, which is Alzheimer's disease or something related. So our brains do slow down, but we can, through memory screenings, and also, if need be, seeing a neurologist, if there's been some history, like somebody who's had any kind of head injury in the past may be more susceptible to having problems later on. So they may even be followed by a neurologist, in their lifetime if it was a serious injury. So those are starting with your general practitioner and a memory screening or a simple memory test, progressing possibly into seeing a neurologist and actually being followed. And I think anything you do, like every other test you might do medically, it's a great baseline. I want to know if my memory's getting worse or is it getting better. How
Right.
can I make it get better? How can I increase it? And you said it earlier there, and that was another program we had, is that you've learned a lot, Mary Ellen. I have to say, you
Really?
remember that brain games, any of those games that we can do on our phone, or even crossword puzzles or things online, but even playing the piano, any kind of musical instrument, learning a different language, all of these things are really stimulating our brain activity and help us to keep our brain working in the best possible way it can, and keeping our memory as intact as possible.
Awesome. Um, ano- how do you encourage someone to wear a mask, especially when going to the doctor? Also, how can I encourage the person to take a jacket off for blood pressure or blood test?
Yes.
Hmm, tricky.
Yeah, well, I would say to that, first of all, congratulations because you got them to the doctor because it's hard to get them to the doctor. So you did, 95% of the job right there. So you're in the doctor's office and maybe they're not as cooperative. They don't want to keep the mask on. That's a difficult one. And as we were saying, just giving people reminders and cues. We have to keep this. I have my mask on. You have to keep your mask on. Maybe having a picture of us with the mask on, is a good reminder. I'm doing it, so you need to do it too. I hope that people, if you're visiting a general practitioner and that person knows about your loved one's condition, where they're maybe diagnosed with a memory impairment or even with Alzheimer's disease, I hope they would understand if your loved one is a little bit uncooperative, and especially in that way with the mask. The mask is just so unusual for us all to have on, and normally, and it doesn't seem normal to our loved one with memory impairment. Um, but yeah, I guess whenever we're going to do blood pressure or maybe we're getting a flu shot, it can be difficult to get somebody to cooperate in that way too. So maybe it's a way of thinking about our clothes, how what clothes we've put on today. Is it something that's easy to get on, easy to get off? If they just won't take the jacket off, will they roll up the sleeve? Sometimes that's too tight though and impedes the blood pressure. So that could be a difficult one too. But I would say maybe try to get away with not wearing the jacket. But if it's chilly out, that's a hard one too. So something that's easier to get off than a jacket maybe. Um, and sometimes cueing, make sure why, and maybe we can get to the bottom of it. Why won't the person cooperate, either taking the jacket off or wearing the mask? Is it because they don't want to come to the doctor? Is it because they had to get up early and they're grumpy about that, or is it because it just happened too quickly, or something's wrong? And if we can turn that negative, whatever's making somebody feel not so happy about what's happening right now, turn it into a positive. Well, listen, we're going to that great place for lunch right after this. If you could just take your jacket off, we'll put it right back on again, and then we're going to go to that fantastic place for lunch. I'll let you have a hamburger, or I'll let you have a, lobster roll or something. That's probably the most expensive thing on the menu. So, maybe something like that is what we need to do. We need to, and it goes back to what our topic is: communication, how to communicate that. And if words are not as effective anymore, holding hands, maybe it's fear. I don't want to take my jacket off. That might hurt. I don't realize that blood pressure, getting your blood pressure doesn't hurt like a flu shot might hurt. And so this is not something that's going to be painful. It's okay. I'll hold your hand. Might help the person communicating with our body language more than with our words.
Great. All right. I hope, let's see. Okay. I don't see any more on the Q&A. So now is your chance, folks, to go ahead and type in your question if you have one, or, well, actually, I don't know that we could. I think we blocked them all out. I was going to say, or you
Well,
can just unmute yourself, but I'm not sure you can do that.
I wanted to just say two other points that I
Please
want to make
do.
sure when we're
Wonderful.
talking about the holidays and talking about the pandemic. So I hope this doesn't happen, but we've all been trying to keep safe. And what if one of us does get the coronavirus? What if I get it, or what if my loved one who I'm caring for? I'm a caregiver and I have a loved one here at home with me with Alzheimer's disease. What's going to happen if one of us gets it? And how are things going to change in the household and with the caregiving? So come up with a plan of action, and maybe communicate it as the caregiver to somebody else in your family or in your care circle. If you're alone as a caregiver here at home caring for your loved one, your spouse or whomever, make sure you have somebody who's a second for you, either your siblings or your friends or your neighbor, somebody who can come in and help, or who does come in and help. Make sure that you've come up with a plan. So if I get the virus and I need to go isolate, who will be caring for our loved one? And if our loved one gets it, who will be caring? Will we continue to care for our loved one? Will they stay home? What if they have to go to the hospital? How will we get through all those hoops? So start thinking about, if you haven't already, coming up with a plan for that. And I know, Mary Ellen, maybe you can fill in some blanks from Visiting Angels, because I know that there's a great plan from your end to help caregivers.
So thank you, Sheila. I will say this though, we are not going into homes that have a COVID positive client at this time. We have been very blessed and lucky with our safety protocols to have avoided the coronavirus in our clients and caregivers. So we want to keep that up. So I wish that I could say, just call us if you come
Mhm.
down with COVID-19, God forbid. But it's actually not that simple.
Yeah. Well, so if you're a caregiver and you've gotten the virus and you
Mhm.
are out of the home, then that would be the best time to get somebody to come in to
Yes.
help with.
So in that scenario, if you were to move into your daughter's home or a neighbor's home or whatever the case
Or
may
be
be,
hospitalized even. Yeah.
or
Hmm.
God forbid, hospitalized, then yes, then there is
Hmm.
not an issue as long as the your loved one tests negative.
Right. Right.
Those chances are good that they may test positive.
Well, we're
So it's
encouraging
a
people to
tough,
come.
tough
Yeah,
situation.
but come up with those plans
You
and
need a plan.
think
Right.
about it. Yeah, how would you handle it? Who could come in?
Yeah.
Who couldn't come in? What would happen? Who, there are a lot of people who are much more at risk than others, and that person, couldn't maybe be somebody who came into the home then at that point if they're more at risk, for other underlying conditions. So we have to really give this a lot of thought, and I hope that being out, they say anytime we have like a big weekend or a big holiday, we usually see a spike in the virus. And so that's what obviously we're all afraid of, is that
Yeah.
Thanksgiving or any of these holidays
Yeah.
would bring, an increase or a spike. But if it does happen to you, you need to be prepared and be ready with a plan as a caregiver.
Right. Right.
So, and communicating that plan then to your loved ones. So that's a whole nother situation, is trying to explain to a loved one why you may not be able to care for them for a certain period of time, for 2 weeks or however long, whatever the situation is. So those
Right.
types of situations you really have to be prepared for. And I wouldn't consider really communicating that to my loved one yet. I would just come up with the plan myself, and then if it had to happen, then act on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Great. All right. Any other points that we may not have covered?
Nice. I'm looking at so you've covered all the questions. Thank you.
Okay, actually, we just had another one. So in the end, this is from the same person about the blood pressure
Oh,
cuff. She's saying, we were at the emergency room and the doctor offered to hold my friend down to give an IV to sedate my friend to get blood. It didn't seem like it was going to work the way the doctor was acting, so I declined doing it. I was told by my family and friends that they knew how to handle situations,
wow. I'm,
telling her, yeah, maybe not hold him
yeah.
down and try to draw blood. Um, but but now her family and friends are questioning her. Well, they know what they're doing. So thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, first of all, I'm surprised that they're even allowing a caregiver in. So there's been some issues about, if you're hospitalized during the last 7 months, they're not letting somebody in with you. And when you have
Even in the
somebody with
emergency room as well?
there was a case down in,
Wow.
it was like Southern Maryland or PG County, where this was somebody who was in the middle to late stages of Alzheimer's disease, very confused, and they weren't allowing a caregiver into the emergency room to sort of help with whatever needed to happen. And So it may be better now. It sounds like, at least in this case, that the person was able to go into the emergency room with their loved one. So that's one great thing
That's
right
a
there.
plus.
I'm glad that
Yeah.
at least they could be there, because I think they have no success. If you don't let the caregiver in with a person with this, you're going to have no success. So it is difficult though. And I think that's when probably your communication style and your keeping somebody calm is really the most important, aspect of getting them care, whatever the issue is. I would question, do we need to do a full blood draw? It may be that it was a condition that needed a full blood draw, but if it's a coronavirus testing or something, I don't know that the nasal swabbing would have gone over any better. It's kind of difficult to imagine somebody who's very confused allowing that to happen either. But
Yeah.
maybe it has to happen the same way I spoke of earlier, is that we take more time. In the emergency room, we don't usually take a lot of time. They're trying to do things quickly. Maybe more than one or two people are working on you at once or coming in and out. So telling people, hey, my loved one has Alzheimer's disease, you coming in and out is going to, just not let anything happen. So trying to ask if they can slow things down, like we talked about, that's definitely going to be one thing. Have one person only, either a nurse or a physician or whatever the situation is, maybe to get this blood draw. Really take some time. It's not like when we go get our blood drawn and you just come in and stick out your arm and they go ahead and do it. That's not going to work with somebody with Alzheimer's disease. So I think we really have to make that a priority, is communicating that this person has Alzheimer's disease. It needs to be slower. It needs to be one person, maybe asking permission, maybe sitting down calmly first, talking about what it's going to be like. The caregiver, maybe, I know when I get my blood drawn, I don't want to look at my blood being drawn. I look over
I know, I
here
don't
while my
either.
blood's being
I
drawn.
don't either. Yeah, same,
So it
same.
could be something like that. And just talking,
Distracting,
yeah,
distracting.
distracting and re-engaging them somewhere else. And if it works, talking about, we'll just get through this and go to lunch, or we'll just get through this and go home and have a nice time and take a nap, and whatever the person would like to do, and whatever they prefer to do. And that's a very hard one, and I'm so sorry that somebody has to go through that. It's
Yeah,
heartbreaking to hear about. But I hate to hear anybody just to hold somebody down,
I
to
know, I don't
sedate
like
them.
that. That's
I mean, there's a lot of people when they get procedures like MRIs, and who don't have Alzheimer's disease or any kind of memory impairment, but they can take some sort of sedation, like oral sedation, that can calm them down to take the MRI. Maybe that's something that needs to happen for this person also. And
before you even
it's hard to
go. Yeah,
plan.
before the appointment.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Depends on what the process or procedure. If it was an emergency, okay, if it's an emergency and it's going to save their life, but I would really hate to see anybody have treated like that in the emergency room. So I know hospitals are in a rush, so it's not a
Yeah,
great place
yeah.
to have that happen.
Okay, so another question. In situations with possible early stage, are there any strategies to determine by phone if the loved one is starting down this path? So it sounds like you're not living with the person, so you're going to try to determine if they are starting down this path through your phone conversations.
Well, we have a lot of everywhere. There are a lot of long distance caregivers. I'm an adult daughter of my mother lives in New York, and so I do a fair bit of phone call, like diagnosing myself. And my mother doesn't have a Alzheimer's disease, but she has a lot of other things. She's in her 80s, so I'm constantly doing that as well. So I think from a memory standpoint, if you know the person well, sure, you could note down what you're noticing. So if you're noticing that the conversation, we used to have great conversations over the phone, But now all of a sudden our conversations aren't that good because the loved one that we're talking to loses their train of thought very
Mhm.
easily, and is actually all the time consumed with trying to figure out what the word is that they're trying to think of, and loses the whole conversation that way because they just can't think of the word that they were trying to say. So those are signs that there could be a memory issue or a memory problem. They'd be great for a memory screening. So looking online, getting a virtual memory screening like the one in Visiting Angels that we'll be having in December, that might be a good first step. But also making notes about what you're observing. Are you seeing or are you hearing in your conversation that there's almost no short-term memory at all? We can't talk about what we had for breakfast yesterday. We don't know. The person doesn't know. And even talking about Thanksgiving last year, they have no recollection of it, but they can remember a Thanksgiving from 20 years ago, the year, whatever happened. And so those could be signs, definitely. I would, if a long distance caregiver, just keep a little bit of a journal type thing. And this is something that we can talk to the caregiver, the local caregiver about. Hey, have you noticed? I was talking to mom today and these three things happened and they never happened before. Have you seen that? And having those conversations. And then somebody, either the caregiver who's close by, communicating with a doctor, then at that point, maybe getting mom or dad in to have a memory test. If the memory screening that was virtual didn't go well, then this could indicate continuing on in the process and seeing a doctor. And having the long distance caregivers observations are just as important as the local caregiver too. I always say try to have one person in charge and feed that information to them so they can get it to the doctor so the doctor knows.
Have 2 minutes left. So, wrapping it all up in a bow, Sheila, what is our last thoughts?
I would just say that good luck, everyone, with your continuing the pandemic and all the holidays. I hope everyone has a great holiday season, but please be patient with your loved ones who are who have a memory impairment diagnosis like Alzheimer's or dementia or another diagnosis. Please be patient, and as we said, connect with them the best way you can. Reminiscing is always fun, and just try to do your best and have a lot of patience and communicate in every way you can, not just with words
Patience
but
is
always.
a virtue. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
For
Especially
everyone.
now. Yes. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Sheila. Of course, we'll be seeing you again in the new year. I cannot wait. We will have our next coffee chat. I believe it is the 18th. Yes,
Of
the
November.
18th. And we will be starting a three session program on, of course, it's on Alzheimer's and dementia with our friends at Fox Rehab. And they'll be talking about 1 week will be about communication, 1 week behavior, and 1 week activities. So be looking for that. And if you need us, Visiting Angels, here's our info. If you need Sheila, there is her info. We
Thank
will be
you.
sending out an edited version of this session, a recording. And if you enjoyed our webinar, we sure would love a little review by Google or on Google. All righty.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
everyone.
so much. We'll see you
Thank
soon,
you.
Sheila. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.